many times in the Bible, the expression of the unity of the divine mind. If you have a bread and you break it in half and share it with someone else, suddenly that bread becomes a sacrament, and your life becomes a part of that sacrament. Just as with the brightening of a lamp in the dining room, when the wick is turned up, there is an adding to, a becoming more of, a glorifying. For we are truly a part of everything that we do. When you share a smile, a glance with someone, a touch, this becomes a moment in which consciousness is elevated and there is an awareness of the oneness with all things, and that is a part of the sharing process. Nothing really belongs to you. No one owns anything. You have things in your stewardship, things that you have for the moment, but those in essence do not truly belong to you. You may use them, true, but if you just use a thing, it becomes mundane. Its significance remains within the 3 dimensions. But when you take that thing and share it, it takes on a different vibration. It is elevated to the plane of true significance. Go back to that piece of bread. You have a little loaf and you sit down and you eat it by yourself. An insignificant event, a small thing, just a piece of food. But break that bread with someone, share it, and there is awareness of a higher concept, of entering into the eternal reality of things. People talk about the raising of consciousness, of entering higher levels of being. This is a process, and sharing is the key.
Thank you, Laura. That was wonderful. Welcome on board, Laura Buzian. I will not forget. Great. So I'm going to take a step here. Well, kind of a small step, but anyway, sing along if you can. I'm taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. I'm taking one small step. It gets closer to my goal. I'm taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Then it won't seem like I've got so far. To go. Taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Taking one small step gets me closer to my goal. I'm taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. And it won't seem like I've got too far to go. I've got dreams filled with passion. I've got fears that seem to pop up in my way, but I've got power deep down in my soul. When I look inside and lose my way, it tells me what I need to know, which is I got one small step, looking closer to the mountain. Gotta take one small step, takes me closer to my goal. I'm taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Then it won't seem like I've got that far to go. I got off the track, couldn't find my way back. I looked inside. The truth that could not be denied. I was making it harder than it had to be, just pushing and fighting until I found the key that I gotta take. One small step gets me closer to the mountain. Taking one small step gets me closer to my goal. I'm taking one small step instead of looking through the mountain. Then it won't seem like I've got that far to go. I'm taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Taking one small step gets me closer to my goal. I'm taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Then it won't seem like I've got that far to go. No, it won't seem like I've got that far to go. No, it won't seem like I've got that far to go.
Alan, that was the perfect song for me today.
Thank you.
This is something that I've got. I don't know. I guess it's not able to read it backwards. It's called I Am Powerful, little stick.
Hey.
Powerful. And when that song said I am powerful, then more powerful I know. I went, yeah.
Great. It's a great song. Thank you, Stephanie.
All right, everyone. Here we go. Today's message from Reverend Joe is loaves and fishes. Can't wait to hear what he's got to say.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
Did you take one small step?
One small step, and that's more powerful. There's my power right there.
There it is. Step into that power, right? Thank you. Appreciate a nice, wonderful prayer, Stephanie. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And I want to thank Laura for the courage to step up and serve our community with her reading. It was a perfect on-spot reading. And so good morning. How are you doing this morning? This fine third week of November. I want to start by saying I had a wonderful last weekend. Thank you for everybody again who came out to our community picnic last Saturday. And then came back Sunday, and we had Donnie Lee playing. We had a whole bunch of just fun, and that's really what this life should be all about. You know, making progress, one small step, doing it in the sense of a community. So if this is your first time, your millionth time, welcome to CSL, Centers for Spiritual Living St. George. And this month, the topic is abundance or abundance. And that's what we're doing. We're having fun recognizing the good that is already here. And last week, we the first week we talked about our connection with abundance. Last week, we talked about how everything we do works in an interconnected way with everyone else because we recognize the truth of one God, one life that we're all living. So one affects all. And today, we're going to look at a parable from the Hebrew Bible or from the Bible, I should say, and what can we gain from that, right? I haven't heard the word in a while for some reason, but Laura brought up the word metaphysical, right? That is part of our teaching and who we are. So we're talking about abundance, our harvest, and Thanksgiving coming up. It's a perfect time to always look at what we have, be grateful for it. That puts us and keeps us in alignment with our natural abundance. So for today, a couple ideas I want to present now so that you have them and hold them throughout the rest of the talk, which is one, to me, it's the most important thing and that we can do, really, the shift that happens from having faith in God to having faith of God. Hold on to that and see how that works with the rest of today, right? So we're not having faith in a God out there trying to seem as if we're worthy, that we have to do X, Y, and Z. we come from the faith of God, knowing that it's already here, that we are worthy, of course, because God is within, God is without. It's all God being expressed. And we're going to take a look at a parable called the Loaves and Fishes. That in the main character of that is Jesus of Nazareth. And we're going to look at that and how also that maybe having the faith, a childlike faith, can actually deepen our understanding, our consciousness of abundance and more, so that we have that grand rising that we've been talking about all year, our annual theme, having a grand rising, and to therefore usher in and connect with the miracles that are already happening. And we look at miracles as, in essence, when we're there, the norm, right? We don't look at it as I don't know if it'll ever happen, and I wish, and there it happened, and yay, it's once in a miracle. No. Miracles are happening all the time. It's a perspective. Now, with regards to Jesus, and we're going to talk about him today, Dr. Holmes, I want to share this quote from him. He says, Jesus was not the great exception. He was the great example. And he even said that greater works than these shall he do, because I go unto my Father. Now, Father, with regards back then, was Jesus's way of interpreting that which is what we call source, universal principle, and spirit, and so on. Keep in mind, this is ages ago, and in order to reach the people, to bring them up, you have to meet them where they're at. And so we look at Jesus as a great example of, in essence, what we can open ourselves to, what is waiting inside. That's why we call it the Christ consciousness, because he knew who he was when he said, I and the Father are one. And in essence, this is what we're doing when we recognize I and the Father are one. This is step one of our affirmative prayer, which Stephanie gave us an example of earlier, right? Step one is that we recognize God, source, life, love, as the one and only power being expressed, all-knowing, all-powerful, everywhere present. It's the only thing going on, happening, and being expressed. And that's, in essence, what Jesus was saying in that phrase. And so as we rise up our consciousness, and I don't know if it's so much of a leveling thing as taking our own filters of limitation and lack off. We have to recognize them first, right? We can't change something we're not aware of. So if we want to experience more love, more joy, more comfort in our life, we have to, I say they have to. If we're going to do that, then we do need to align to that, to recognize that it's already here. So we're shifting in our thoughts of abundance. And when we shift, again, going back to the idea of the miracle, we think it's impossible. And then we say, well, it's possible, therefore it's a miracle. Well, here's a different way I'm going to present to us shifting today, which is shifting our consciousness from impossible to I'm possible. Meaning I'm possible. I can open myself to the love, the full love that is present, to the full blessings that are here each and every moment. But we have to put on the right filters, or maybe I should say we just simply have to remove the filters that are all dirty of, again, lack and limitation, of disease, and recognizing our thoughts, cleaning up our thoughts and choosing higher ones that align with the truth that is present. And that goes back to when Jesus said, even greater works can he do. Well, even greater works can you and I do. That's the whole point of this life, is to work each and every day at expressing and allowing in like more and more truth, spirit, love, joy, laughter. It's all here now. And so let's dive into this miracle of loaves and fishes again. It comes from the Bible. And just to recap, there was a very large crowd following Jesus, because at that point he was already known as a healer, as being special, as being gifted. And so at one point they're following him, and they're in an area, and it gets pretty late, and people were hot and tired, and it wasn't like you could just go around the corner to a Carl's Jr. and grab a burger. They're out, and there's nothing much going on. and he didn't want the people to have to then travel back to the nearest city. So he asks, what do we have to serve the people who are, again, tired, they're exhausted? And at that point, a young boy steps up and he says, I have these 5 loaves and I have 2 fish or fishes. And Jesus says, good enough. And so he instructs his disciples to have the crowd sit in groups of 50. And he used the 5 loaves and 2 fish. He broke, he prayed, he gave thanks, he broke the bread and started handing it to his disciples to hand to the crowds. And there was, at the end, more than enough. As a matter of fact, he fed everybody, and there were 12 baskets said to be left over. According to the story, there is roughly 5,000 people that were fed by the loaves and the fishes. So what can we look out of this, right? We know that in the Bible, stories can be taken many ways, and every story that's there, we can learn something from. So one of the things is right from the very beginning, because Jesus had the knowing, not the hoping, the knowing that anything he asked would be given to him, not because he was special, but because he understood the connection of what we call God or source or spirit. Okay? So then he gets the loaves and fishes and he raises his head. Now, one of the things it could simply mean is that he turns his face to that which is God, but also he's turning away from the current circumstances. Meaning, if he just sat there and go, "Oh my gosh, look how many people there are. They're upset. What if there isn't enough? What if I start and then people are left without?" And so he turns his attention to what we would call truth, principle, to recognizing there is no lack. Okay, in God is always more and then enough, because it creates from itself, and itself is infinite. So he turns his consciousness away from the hungry crowd and to from the possibility of noticing lack onto truth, onto the true source of abundance. He trusted and he knew that he had access to the creative power, the power that the quote we hear all the time from Ernest Holmes is, there is a power and I have access to it and can use it. And so he recognized this infinite source of abundance and knew and saw, I'm sure, that everybody was going to be fed. And then he gave thanks. So he looks up and he's saying, thank you. Thank you for what? Because he didn't Jesus by himself wasn't looking at himself as a single man, an individual. He was recognizing that he is a channel of the divine spirit and flow of God. And that as he opened to it, that the gifts would be aplenty. And so that's what he did. He just did his thing. He focused on tearing the bread and pulling up the fish. He wasn't keeping track. He wasn't keeping count, because that would be lack. When you know there's more than enough, that you just scoop away, right? It would be like going to the ocean, and even if you took bathtubs, you could be there a whole lifetime, and there's going to be more than enough. Jesus had this level of consciousness of abundance, right? And so again, he gave thanks for what he had, because again, he knew that source is unlimited. So he turns his focus onto what is possible. He knows that he is aligned with that. He gives thanks for what is. Ernest Holmes, share a quote from him. He says, "We have been so accustomed to thinking of Jesus as a man filled with love and compassion and human kindness that we have overlooked something else about him that is equally important. Jesus had access to a spiritual power that he used in every way. To him, it seemed the most natural thing in the world that he should be able to tell the paralyzed man to walk, or multiply the loaves and fishes, or still the wind and waves." Now, can we do this? I will say 100% we can. Are we there at that level now? What I would say is take a look around you, right? Just because we think we can doesn't mean we can in that moment. What I mean is, like, I know I can drive to the store, but and I can see myself at the store buying something, but I'm not there right now. There are steps that I need to take. Can I allow more into my life and align with that? Yes, there's a process to it. One of the other things, going back to the story, is specifically as he was breaking up the loaves and the fishes, I want to point out again that he was recognizing, and he's doing this, that he had the sense of surrender, is what I'm saying. Surrendering to that power that Ernest Holmes just talked about. Now, he didn't go, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And then he was always there. He was always practicing. He was always in alignment. And when he wasn't, he would go and meditate and take care of himself, raise his vibration up, because as much he's just like you and I. He was, right, spiritual being having a human existence. And so, yes, he did. It's very easy to give too much of yourself in a moment and so forth. So it is said that often in the Bible when he says, and he went into the desert for a time, or he went high on a mountaintop. And what I have been taught is that's when he took time to do self-care and keep his energy, his light high, his consciousness high. And so he had faith when he broke that bread, when he started peeling apart the fish. Because if he didn't really have faith, he wouldn't have begun to break it, would he? And he wouldn't even begin because, right, you wouldn't want to look bad. Would he really have broken the bread if he didn't have an abundance, a consciousness of abundance, right? If he was worried at all that there would not be enough and risk looking bad, risk being a failure, letting down the crowd. Look, that's easy to do. And we do it all the time. And he had already enough practice, right? He was a discipline of his faith, and that God was not out there, that God was right with him and as him. And he showed it in thought and in action. So often the issue is we don't have faith of God, because we get caught up in the circumstances, in life happening here and now in this physical plane. And when we cannot see the way or how it can happen, we freeze. We say it can't happen. We say it's impossible. And our practice is to open each and every day more to the I'm possible. It's possible. A little more of Ernest Holmes. He says the power that Jesus manifested was divine. It was not the will of an individual, but his willingness to believe that gave him power. It was not a concentration of spiritual forces that Jesus exercised, but rather a childlike and implicit faith in the reality of the Spirit in human affairs. In the reality of Spirit, the truth, the power, the source of all in human affairs, not the other way around. So he recognized that it's Spirit first. He recognized that anything he wanted to have or experience, he could. It was already there through Spirit. And then he opened so that would be manifested, so it would become a reality. So he mentions this idea of childlike faith, right? So what does it mean to have childlike faith? I remember learning this as a Roman Catholic, and it still, as an adult, sticks in my mind. Now, for me, when I hear that phrase, the word simplify comes to me. The word, and on the opposite side is monkey mind. When I don't have a childlike faith, in other words, a wonder. Right? When I was a child, everything was wonderful and new, and I looked up and I can make something out of nothing. I mean, I remember back in the old days of just, if I had tinfoil, we'd make a ball, and me and my cousin and friends, we'd play hockey on our knees. We would just with nothing, a tinfoil ball. There was abundance everywhere. But then we kind of grow up and we're told how it has to happen. And we begin to put limitations without knowing it. We limit the level of abundance that we are opening ourselves to, right? Children, they believe in magic. They believe things are possible. They expect things to work out. Or you can show a child a card trick over and over and over, and they're loving it. They're in the wonder of it all. They're just in the experience of it all. They're in curiosity, the power of curiosity. And to our going back to our parable, the boy that brought the loaves and fishes, right? Childlike faith. He just believed. He just believed that this is what we have. Take it here. And just maybe it was magic to him. But he, in essence, knew that Jesus had the faith of God, right? And maybe he was one of the only ones there. And maybe that's why it's so important that we have this example of a childlike faith that brought, right? Because without that, if this child didn't step forth in belief, we wouldn't have the story, would we? Now, I'm going to take a couple quotes today from a talk that Ernest Holmes gave on a radio show a long time ago, and I'm not going to put it all up on screen. So just bear in mind, just listen, please. He says in this part, "Isn't it wonderful that out of all the vast throng of people who needed to be fed, and the doctors of the law who stood around, and those who thought they knew all the answers, and even his immediate disciples, the only person in that great congregation who really entered into the spirit of what Jesus was doing was a little boy. You see," he says, "Jesus and the little boy were the only two people in that gathering who didn't know that it couldn't be done. And Jesus apparently wanted the cooperation of someone who did know that it could be done, just as he knew." So Jesus held the consciousness that it could be done. And we know through law of vibration or law of attraction that drew the resources needed. And in this case, the resources came by way of a young boy. Okay? So it's important that we trust, that we take this, Alan's song was perfect. It's one small step. One small step each and every day will get you across the country, right? It'll climb a mountain. So what is your mountain that's in front of you that seems too foreboding to even take a small step? And then we sit in our fear. We don't want to, but because we can't see it, we limit the abundance that is in front of us. There's sometimes in life where maybe it's just letting it go and saying, the heck with it. Right? And recognize we're so afraid of failing as human beings. And until we recognize that failure is a part of success. You try it, it doesn't work. It's a failure. You try it, it doesn't work. It's a failure. That's okay. You're failing at something. Okay? Now, seeing ourselves as failures, that's a mindset. Okay? That's not going to help us get to where we want to be. If I see myself as a failure, as opposed to someone who failed at something, failing at something is an event. Again, having a mindset of a failure means we're not going to be receiving the level of comfort, of joy, of love, of health, of wealth that we want to, because we're limiting it. And there's some times in my life where I just have gone for it. There was one time I wanted to share with you where I kind of did have the faith of a child. Now, I was in my young 20s, and I had an opportunity in front of me that it was kind of really even more interesting, the whole story. But there was an opportunity where I had worked on as an equipment manager. I love hockey, by the way. And there was back in the 90s in Buffalo, we had a roller hockey team. Long story short, I ended up assisting with being their equipment manager, having no experience, by the way. So that's part of the story. So then in the process of that, I had begun playing hockey at a higher level for me. A lot of it was like organized street hockey and so forth. I didn't know how to skate or anything like that. But I asked the coach before the end of the year, I say, look, can I get a shot at goalie next year? And he's like, yeah, see what you could do and come see me next year. So within just a short period of time, I taught myself how to skate. I went out and bought all the pads and all that. all the while not holding the idea that what are you doing? Like you don't even qualify. Like you're literally coming off the streets. You've skated for 2 months and now you're going to go out for a professional team. And that's exactly what I did. I figured I had nothing to lose in that instance and everything to gain. Now, I made the team as a third goalie, emergency goalie, never saw an ounce of playing time. And I say that because I don't see myself as a failure. I had a blast. I was out there with professional players. My game, of course, my level of experience upped. And it was something that, being now 55, I go back and I think about it and I'm like, wow, like, what about the me now? Do I still have that attitude of what do I have to lose? Meaning, and do I allow that to hold me back when it's not something that's going to put me in harm's way or my family in harm's way? But how often can we just go for it and not worry? Like, just, again, have the faith of life. It's even if it doesn't work out. I didn't get to play like I really wanted to. I saw myself, I visioned, and this was before I even knew what our faith was. But am I sad that I made that opportunity? Absolutely not. And did it impact the rest of my life? Absolutely. And I was thankful for every opportunity. And I spoke of it, and, it carried me on all the way till not too many years ago. Of playing ice hockey then. So I went from roller, and then I figured, hey, I got the pads. Let me go try ice. And I taught myself at midnight. They had open skating at midnights on Saturdays in Buffalo, New York. And that's where I taught myself how to play ice hockey. So I could have said, oh, there's no limitations. I could have said, oh, I don't want to at midnight. Who wants to strap on goalie gear at midnight? When you have that desire to experience more, that is spirit saying, yes, it's already here. That's why you feel so good when you think about it. And let's remember the power in being thankful, just as Jesus was the example of. Ernest Holmes says, the spirit is the source of supply and substance forever taking form. Our supply is never limited to a particular channel. All the possibilities of the infinite being exist for us right now. There can never be any less. There never will be any more, meaning it's all here. We're not saying more stuff because what we know is that more stuff, well, that means we can't have more stuff. No. What it means is there's always enough God to go around, right? Now, one of the things that will keep us stuck in our current situation is complaining. And if you've been with us, we are going into this Tuesday, week 3 of a complaint-free world. And here's something for you. You know what that is? That is the bracelet that I wore out and broke because I switched it so many times. Did I quit? No, I put on another one. And I'm grateful because what I have noticed by practicing is, one, I started out and I was complaining an awful lot. And complaint is a prayer for what you don't want. So I want more, but all my attention and focus was on complaining about what I don't have, what's not happening, X, Y, Z. So I'm down to less and less and less switching of the band because I'm complaining less. And you know what? I do feel better. I do feel more focused, and I do feel happier overall, which is not a bad byproduct of the process. If you're interested, check our newsletter. It's complimentary for everyone. You can get yourself the book and start now. If I don't get a rubber band, just start. So part of this, me being successful, is having faith of God, knowing that I can do it. Because there was a time where I'm like, there's no way I'm going to get through a day without complaining. But then I have to go, wait, that thought's not going to get me there. No, it won't. And so being thankful to catch every time I do complain, I've learned my habits. I've learned some beliefs that I need to shift. And as Ernest Holmes says, Ernest is Wayne Dyer, he says, abundance is not something we acquire. It's something that we tune into. Right? So this kind of is the answer to people who say, well, I'll believe it when I see it. Well, if we understand how creation works, right? It's thought, and then we imbue it with our energy, and then it becomes a thing. So how can you see something if you don't believe in it? So the flip side of this shift is I'll see it when I believe it. I'll see it and experience it when I have faith of God. So what about when we're feeling stuck or troubled, or we can't even really find something to be thankful for, or when we try, it feels fake, right? We can't see the blessings that are in front of us. We feel depressed. We feel anxious. We feel like sometimes like I'm focusing on all that's wrong. This quote I found by Meister Eckhart is perfect to answer that. And he says, if God seems far away, who moved? And we're talking about moving in consciousness. So when we feel distant from God, from source, from love, from joy, from happiness, from hope, understand, going back to again, Alan's perfect song, one small step. What can you do in this moment to bring you closer? What's the next best feeling thought? Notice I said feeling thought, not the next best thought. Too often, if I'm not paying attention to the way I feel, I'm like, oh, I feel depressed, but I want to feel joy just in the way I say it. I can feel like it's too big of a jump. That's okay. Love yourself where you're at, right? Where am I at? Well, I'm feeling depressed. What's a thought about that would feel better than feeling depressed? I say, well, I know I felt this way before, and I know that I've always gotten out of it. Okay, that feels better, a little hopeful. I realize that I'm better than I used to be, so when I get this way, I tend to feel better quicker than I used to. And just keep going on what Abraham, the teachings of Abraham say, a rampage of appreciation. What's the next best feeling thought? What's the next best feeling thought? Moving on and recognizing what's here. It's a matter of moving back into alignment with the divine. And again, we're not moving physically, so to speak. We're opening to what is already present and saying yes to it. All right. So to kind of bring it to a close and I want to a conclusion, I want to share more from that Thanksgiving radio show from Dr. Holmes. Again, it's long, so just listen, please. He says, let's you and I see if we cannot become as little children. It is natural for us to believe. It is natural for us to dance with joy and enter into the rhythm of life with happiness. And it is natural for us to expect the miracle of love to perform its act of kindness. We may be certain that we are talking about the greatest thing in life. There is an inner presence that responds to us. There is a law of good that works for us. There is a power of right that can rearrange all of our circumstances if we believe it can. Truly, he says, when we know abundance as Jesus did, have childlike faith and give blessings in advance, our prayers are answered, our supply is multiplied, and we dance with joy and thanksgiving. So again, the message of abundance, right? Abundance. And again, it's not always talking about the things, because everything we want is there a reason for it. There's a feeling connection to it. So what I ask of us is to practice one small step of shifting, of first noticing where we're at, and then shifting into more. It's okay to want more love, to want more health or better health. It's a more trusting relationships and so on. It is all waiting here for us. And our community is set up so that we can assist each other in doing this. So again, while we have to do the work on our own, there's only one life being lived. So we don't have to do it all by ourselves. We don't have to always come up with everything in our, we can in our own way. But what I mean is, like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? There's many forms of meditation. There's many forms of prayer. There's times when I just go sit in the yard and talk. as if I'm talking, and that which is God in my mind is present, and I have a conversation. And it helps every single time. One small step, my friends. All right, so let's go to our weekly affirmation. Again, this is the idea of practicing the presence. Okay, so it is abundance is my birthright, flowing from and as the infinite giving of spirit. For spirit is always giving of itself. Now, we're going to have a conversation after service. I'm going to give you the topic that we're going to talk about. I'd like to see more faces. You showed up for the picnic. You showed up for service all the time. I want to see you in this afternoon meeting. My question to you is simply, what does walking by faith, not by sight, mean to you? Let me ask you again. What does walking by faith, not by sight, mean to you? Come join me. Let's have a conversation. I'm going to close this in prayer and recognize and be grateful and thankful for the abundance that already is, for the connection that we have right where we're at, for the recognition of the presence of God that is here and now and always. I open myself to it. I feel through it. I allow the divine to show me the next step through my thoughts, through my feelings and emotions, through any kind of guidance, whether it's outside in, inside out. I trust because I have the faith of God. I am here. God has brought me this far, and I am that. I am one with all that God is. For I recognize there's only one mind. My mind is the mind of God. It's connected. All my thoughts are God thoughts. And I stop limiting myself and open myself to the infinite abundance of love, joy, support, health, prosperity, relationships. Life is truly wonderful. I step into that. I am that. I share that. And so it is. Thank you. Namaste.
That was awesome, Reverend Joe. It was so much in cahoots with what I'm experiencing this weekend. What I like about your talk is that when you were playing hockey, is that you involved yourself into total immersion into what you wanted to discover.
Good point.
Whether
Good
you
word.
did, it didn't matter the outcome.
No.
The outcome maybe was just to provide you with this talk today.
Well, it's one of those things where I let the experience, I kept holding, would it be so cool if? I let that if guide me, and eventually it became a reality.
Perfect. All right. We'll see you on Zoom.
Perfect.
All right. Thanks to Reverend Joe for a wonderful message. We have some announcements right now. Our prayer requests are at www.cslsg.org/about. You can go on our newsletter and find this and click right on it, and people will be there ready to service with you. Our next in-person service is November 24th and December 8th, which is wonderful. We have twice a month now. Okay, like we said, our Zoom conversation is available today. Come on and join us. We're there for anywhere between a half an hour and an hour, so it's not a lot of time. Our class on Complaint-Free World is awesome. Go ahead and join us anytime. You can just show up, even if you don't have a book, because what you hear, you can use your own rubber band at home. Anyway. So November 19th and the 26th are those dates that you can, you can come and join. And you're invited to join the Core Council. Just contact anybody, and they will, anybody in leadership, and they will provide you with the application and everything. We'd love to have some new people and new blood in our organization. We kind of need them because you can only serve like two consecutive service venues. Anyway, the details are in our newsletter and on our website. Okay, and we have a way of giving. If you want to give more than just your time and talents, you can give with Zelle. Our newsletter has instructions on how to connect with Zelle. You can give online on PayPal at CSL.org, or use the QR code that's right here. You can give by mail. You can send checks. I love the reading today because, yes, it was an older book because it didn't talk about all this stuff, this new technology we have, which is awesome. Back then, you had to send a thing a check in the mail. So wonderful how we progressed. Okay, our upcoming Sundays. November 24th, Rise Up and Dance. Yes, I've been doing that all weekend long. I've been dancing my patoolie off. Anyway, more about that on Zoom if you show up. And then on December 1st, it's standing on solid air. Ooh, wouldn't that be nice? Levitate, but really, there's probably God underneath you, so you're not really, it's solid air. Okay, and that will be with our beloved Reverend Joe. All right, I'm going to gather everybody up. Come on down.
Come on down.
Okay, something wonderful is happening through me right now.
It is this thing called life.
Life is in my mind, life is in my body, life is in all that I do.
I am it, I embrace it, and I share it just the way that it is.
And just the way that it is becoming.
And thank you.
you.
Life.
Yeah.
You.
Woo-hoo. Thanks, everyone.
Have a blessed week. See you in a few minutes.